Let's dive on in and discuss our favorite picks in every round of fantasy football drafts this year, fellas. 10 rounds. We're going to dive through 30 different picks. You're going to get a pick from all three of us fellas in each round. If you're watching over on YouTube, you're going to see it on your screen. You see exactly how it's laid out. 30 different options across 10 rounds for you. So Cameron, I'll have you kick us off here. Who is your favorite pick in round one?
It's Tyreek Hill. And for me, it's just because he's got, to me, the most upside at the wide receiver position. And if I'm really trying to pick between who's the safer option between him and Christian McCaffrey, who's more likely to stay healthy throughout the season, I'm going to pick the wide receiver over the running back. So for me, it's highest upside and one of the safer picks because truthfully too, quarterback situations kind of affecting, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase. We don't know if Burrow's going to be healthy. CeeDee Lamb's got all the contract stuff. Tyreek Hill's like that top guy where you just don't have to worry about it. You just pick Tyreek Hill. He'll get you 20 points a week and you just leave him in your lineup.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Tyreek Hill. I think he's the safest option at that point in your drafts. Because like you said, it's McCaffrey with the calf injury. It is CeeDee Lamb with the contract dispute. And we know Tyreek Hill can go for 2,000 yards. I mean, he went for 1,700 yards last year. He did it the year prior with the Miami Dolphins as well. Who says he can't make it 3 in a row? Ty, who's your favorite pick in the first round?
My favorite is Breece Hall. And it's really because I have more confidence in Breece Hall than Bijan Robinson or any of the other running backs that you could take at the end of the first round to replace Christian McCaffrey as the running back one. Now, that's not to say that that will happen because I think a lot of us would still take Christian McCaffrey as the 101 because we expect him to be the best running back in fantasy football again. But if McCaffrey doesn't, let's say the calf injury lingers throughout the season for whatever the reason being, I would bet that Breece Hall is the odds-on favorite essentially to be the running back one at season's end, and to get him in the first round after, and he's going somewhere in the middle of your first round. Some people may try to snipe him at the third, the fourth pick or whatever it is, but I honestly kind of get it because they're looking for that kind of advantage.
Well, and especially last year when we saw the receiving work, the receiving upside that he has as well. He's behind a much better offensive line this year as well. The Jets went out and clearly addressed the need of, we need to protect Aaron Rodgers. We also need to block for Breece Hall because when he gets loose, he's an absolute animal. Cameron, do you prefer Breece to Bijan or are you still a Bijan over Breece?
I prefer Breece to Bijan. And it just has to do with the fact that there's no one else in that backfield, right? Tyler Algier is going to be there just enough to be annoying. Like, I still think Bijan's the top 3 running back, but I think Algier is going to be just annoying enough. And we've seen Breece just absolutely pop off multiple times, right? Last year was disappointing for Bijan, but we've seen it from Breece where he just takes over weeks. And so, yeah, I'm definitely taking Breece.
Well, and reports came out today. We're recording this on Wednesday, August 21st, right around 5 p.m. Central Time. I mean, reports were coming out that the Falcons are looking to get Bijan like 16, 17 touches a game, and Tyler Algier is still going to get 12 to 14 touches a game, which is like, are we serious? But when you look at everybody's projections, like Bijan still projects to be a top 3 running back, but you can't say Breece Hall has that same issue with Braylon Allen, with Israel Abanikanda, right? Like neither of those guys are going to be a Tyler Algier kind of guy for Breece Hall. My favorite pick in the first round, I spent a long time thinking about this one. This was kind of hard for me. I did go Justin Jefferson, mostly because I think he's going to be the most likely to slide in your drafts. And I think some of your league mates, if they haven't been paying attention this offseason, they're going to say, gross. Sam Darnold is his quarterback, and JJ McCarthy is out for the year with the meniscus injury. I think that's just silly, considering Jefferson was still averaging 22 fantasy points per game with Nick Mullins last year. Nothing against Nick Mullins. I think Sam Darnold could be a more competent quarterback in Kevin O'Connell's offense. And when I draft Justin Jefferson, I'm not really drafting the quarterback. I'm drafting my trust in Kevin O'Connell. And when you have TJ Hawkinson, who's going to miss the first part of the year, Jordan Addison, who actually proved at the tail end of last season, only had one touchdown without Kirk Cousins as his quarterback last year. Like, Justin Jefferson is so clearly going to be the guy, and he's talented. He top 3 wide receiver in the league. I just don't want to bet against that with a head coach and play caller that I trust with a quarterback that I think is probably going to be better than Nick Mullins, and he's still going to be phenomenal. And if your league mates are dumb enough to let you could get him at the 8th overall pick. And we're talking about a guy who could be a top 3 fantasy wide receiver this year. So I love Justin Jefferson as my favorite pick in the first round. Though, Cameron, I do agree with you. I think Tyreek Hill would be my runner-up. How far do you think Justin Jefferson should actually slide in the first round?
I mean, I think me and Ty on our last live draft took him at the 104, and that's where I think he should go. But he shouldn't go past the 108, right? We've talked about it a lot. The top 8 are kind of in an echelon to themselves. I don't think he should go past the 108. I think you can make an argument for pretty much anyone in that, top 8.
Yeah, I would say even the 106. Like, as much as we like the talent that is Jamar Chase, we do kind of need to acknowledge that his hold in right now with his contract disputes and the question marks about Joe
Bingo.
Burrow, like those are different than your typical, wide receiver issues, or question marks going into a season, right? So that's at least one. And so then it's really a question of like, is it Jefferson or Amon-Ra St. Brown? And to be completely honest, like I think we would still take Jefferson just because I feel like the game script is always going to favor Jefferson versus Detroit. You never know. Like Amon-Ra might just put up like 7 targets a game, which sounds decent for, a 5th or 6th round, 5th or 6th round wide receiver. Jefferson, we're all kind of expecting him to average at least 9-10 targets a game because that's just how the offense is going to run this year.
I love the point you brought up about Jamar Chase because I've started asking myself this question. Sometimes I need to ask myself just like an outlandish question and then chew through it to see what I actually think about it. Are we sure we should be drafting Jamar Chase ahead of AJ Brown with such confidence right now? And yes, AJ Brown. Joe Burrow still coming off the wrist injury. Jamar Chase is holding in for a new contract, even though he has 2 years left on the deal. The Bengals just handle contracts so much differently than the rest of the NFL. And I know I said AJ Brown when we're talking about Justin Jefferson, but like, I already know I'm drafting Jefferson ahead of Jamar Chase. So I need to go to the next wide receiver in my rankings, which is AJ Brown. And if Jamar Chase's holdout goes in another week, I'm really starting to ask questions. We're not talking about Jamar Chase. We're talking about our favorite picks. Jamar Chase is not one of our favorite picks, but Tyreek Hill, Breece Hall, and Justin Jefferson are in the first round. Fellas, let's move on to round 2 now. Cameron, who is your favorite pick in round 2?
It's Puka Nacua, and the biggest reason is we were drafting him in the first round earlier in the season. Right now, he's slid into the second round, and because he's been dealing with some knee injury, it sounds like he's going to be ready to go for week 1. That's really the biggest reason. Is if he's ready to go week 1, I believe you're getting a end of the first round pick in the middle of the second round right now. And so that is why I like Puka. I still think he has a top 10 upside like we saw last season, right? You don't just happen to break the rookie reception record if you're not an absolute stud, right? I mean, he didn't just stumble onto that. So yeah, I mean, I think it's Puka. I really like your guy. The YouTube picked the same person. I'm going to spoil that. I was very close to picking him as well too.
So, especially when you look at Puka, who's going in the second round now, the other wide receivers going in the second round, Marvin Harrison Jr., who, again, rookie curve, he's going to be a phenomenal talent in the NFL. He's going to have a great second half of the season, but he's definitely going to get off to a slower start, I should say. Almost said just a flat out slow start, but he'll get off to a slower start. Devontae Adams, who we have expressed concerns on as much as we hope he's consistent and just a target hog. Cameron, you've mentioned it. Only 2 wide receivers have surpassed 1,100 yards since 2014 in their age 32 season, which is just an absurd number. Then you have Chris Olave and Drake London, who have yet to prove it themselves too. So when Puka has gone out and done it, he is like easily the most reliable wide receiver that you can draft in the second round, albeit it's going to be right at the 1-2 turn there. So I think Puka's he was in contention, but Ty, you and I both took a player on the same team as Puka Nacua, and that is Kyren Williams. Why do you love Kyren Williams in the second round?
Just because I think the payoff is top tier. Like, there is really no one in that second round you kind of look at like a Jahmyr Gibbs, maybe if you're a believer in Derrick Henry going over to Baltimore at 30 years old, you might throw Derrick Henry into that conversation. I don't. That's why Kyren Williams is my favorite pick in the second round, because the potential payoff for Kyren Williams as a top 3 running back in all of fantasy. There is no one in the second round that can give you that kind of upside at their own position. So to me, it's really simple. I get people are kind of scared off like Blake Corum, just a third round draft pick with coming off of a pretty he's got the production profile that most people look for in these college running backs, but that shouldn't be a reason to go off of Kyren, because that's already baked into his cost at this point. Like if Kyren was still going as like a running back 3 in drafts, sure, I'd understand it. The guy's going as like the 6th or 7th or even sometimes the 8th running back off the board. He's not going to fall below that because of Blake Corum. If anything, it's just closer to being top 5 now than he is to top 3 because of Blake Corum. But I don't think that Corum plays that big of a role into this Rams offense. So I think that upside is still there for Kyren. And so for, again, the second round capital you got to pay, it's a pretty easy one for me to swallow.
Kyren Williams could have averaged 5 less points per game last year in half PPR formats and been the running back 5 in points per game still. And we are currently drafting him right now as the running back 7. No, excuse me, the running back 5, running back 6. So essentially, what you're saying is, if Corum still gets 5-6 points per game, well, great, we're drafting Kyren Williams right where he's supposed to be. But the upside with Kyren Williams is that he still sees the lion's share in that Corum still only averages 3-4 points per game instead of 5 points per game. And we're looking at Kyren Williams as an overall running back 1 upside kind of back. So I am with you. I mean, he is a smash for me in the second round, especially when I'm looking to go like anchor running back. People might be a little bit concerned with the Kyren Williams because it's like, well, you got, like you've mentioned already, Ty, he's got Blake Corum there. I'm really not that concerned about Blake Corum because I think what Blake Corum allows the Rams to do is maintain their offensive structure, maintain their offensive rhythm, and not have to worry about calling up Darrell Henderson off the streets again and say, hey man, can you come play 80% of the snaps for us this week? We literally don't have anybody else. Blake Corum keeps them in their offensive rhythm, keeps them in their offensive stride. I don't think it has anything to do with it doesn't have as much to do with lightening Kyren's load as much as it has to do with maintaining the dynamic structure of this Rams offense. But before we dive into round 3, before we transition there, got to give people a quick reminder. You can listen to our podcast in a multitude of ways. The most fun way, youtube.com/@thefantasyfootballfellas. If you're watching over there right now and you're not subscribed, it's a crime. It honestly should be a federal offense. So make sure you're subscribed. Turn on those notifications as well so you know when all of our newest podcasts are up. We're posting 3 times a week all throughout the season as well, giving you all the fantasy football tips and tricks you need to dominate your league mates this year. But if you are driving, if you are mowing your lawn or something and you can't watch a YouTube video, you can listen to our podcast feed as well. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcast from, just search Fantasy Football Fellas. You'll see our brand over there. So again, youtube.com/@thefantasyfootballfellas or wherever you get your podcasts from. Fellas, let's dive into round 3 now. Cameron, who's your favorite pick in round 3?
My guy is Devon Achane, and I think kind of like Ty was talking about with Kyren Williams in round 2, Achane offers that same upside in round 3. I mean, what we saw for him last year was unreal. I mean, the dude broke fantasy football. And now this season, you're getting him. Sometimes you maybe have to dip into the second round, I'll admit, but sometimes you're getting him right in the beginning of the third round. And I think for a guy who's got that kind of upside, who's on a team like Miami that's so conducive for scoring points and putting up big yardage, like that is huge, for Achane. So you combine the spot he's in with his talent, and I just don't know if you can get the same upside with anybody else in the third round.
Yeah, a lot of times I think you'll see Achane take a slide into the third round because the drafters on the front end, they either have Christian McCaffrey, so they don't want to double dip on Devon Achane. the CD Lamb manager might, but they could also pass on Achane. Then Tyreek Hill often goes in the top 3 too, and they're like, well, I don't want 2 Dolphins. And those are, frankly, the only 2 Dolphins I'm willing to put together on my redraft teams this year. Because I just want guys who can score 40 points. Like, it seems like a good strategy if you can just draft guys who have the opportunity to give you 40 points. Those dudes don't grow on trees. So even though they're on the same offense, like that's often a case where I'm very okay drafting, Devon Achane and Tyreek Hill if it's even in round 2, or you could probably push them around into round 3 most times as well. I just always think that's a good strategy. If you can draft clearly a good player, right? We say this all the time, on a good NFL offense who just flat out can score 40 points on a week. Those are guys I want on my fantasy football team. So I'm with you. I do like Devon Achane in the 3rd round. I think I chose to go a little bit of a different way. We'll get to my guy in a moment. Just because Devon Achane is so close to that turn, and Ty, I think you did too. So who is your favorite player in the 3rd round?
I hate to keep harping on the Rams players here, but it's Cooper Kupp. Because if the reports are true that this offense is going to go through Cooper Kupp again, I'm not going to sit here and say that he can be a Triple Crown winner or anything like that, but I don't think there's really anyone in that range of wide receivers or even running backs that an offense is going to go through, right? And we're not even close to the age cliff. Sure, we're getting close, but we are still a year or 2 away from that. And if you have any injury concerns, I don't really know what to tell you other than like the Rams aren't concerned, so you really shouldn't be concerned. I really think that like Cooper Kupp, even if he doesn't possess like number 1 wide receiver overall upside, you aren't going to, you definitely are not going to lose anything by taking Cooper Kupp because you know that he's such a mainstay in the Rams offense. I really just view him as a guy that you can't go wrong with.
Well, and when the Rams are fully healthy last year, Cooper Kupp was top 10 wide receiver in fantasy football. Now what happens when Puka Nacua is out? Like, Kupp has top 10 upside still, does he not? Like, this Rams offense is so explosive as long as Matthew Stafford is at the helm, as long as Sean McVay is calling plays. I mean, Cameron, I know you love Cooper Kupp.
Yeah.
He was probably almost your pick here, was he not?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think if I didn't kind of make sure Achane was a 3rd round pick when I was doing my stats, I think he would have, because I truly believe that he has top 10 upside even if Puka Nacua is in the lineup. So that's where I stand on Cooper Kupp, but I don't really think that's crazy to say because, like you said, they still got Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford, right? I mean, you got all 3 of them, and as long as all of them are healthy, yeah, they got to possess that kind of upside.
You also boil in the fact that this team is without Aaron Donald now. This defense just is not going to be the same. He's the anchor kind of holding that defense down, the glue keeping them all together. And now you don't have that. I think the Rams are going to find themselves in more shootouts than we may anticipate this year. And when they're clicking on all cylinders in the passing game, this is a top 5 passing offense in the NFL. So yeah, I love Cooper Kupp. He was almost my selection as well. But my selection did go to Jaylen Waddle. Now, it's funny because when we make videos about drafting Jaylen Waddle in the 3rd round, so many people are like, no way you're getting Jaylen Waddle in the 3rd round. And it's like, well, where else would I be taking him? Like, over on Underdog, he goes in the 2nd round. But that's the only spot where he goes in the 2nd round because he's going in the early 4th round on almost every other platform. That's not Sleeper, which is just baffling to me. So yeah, technically I'm reaching around the curve here to bump Jaylen Waddle up here. And I talked about him on our Flag Plants episode yesterday. He is one of my flag plants for the 2024 season. I absolutely love Jaylen Waddle. I think he's in for a bounce back season. Everything that we knew Jaylen Waddle was good at was still confirmed last year. Just wasn't on the field to produce for you. He can still be a target getter. He can still be a hyper efficient wide receiver. Just because he was bad for 1 year does not mean he is permanently bad. He is not a Miles Sanders kind of player. He is not a Joe Mixon kind of player where you just get frustrated with them and say, nope, he's on my do not draft list again. Waddle is still a phenomenal talent entering only his 4th year in the league. He is just fine. He is my favorite pick in the 3rd round because really you can get him at any point in the 3rd round. In the middle of the 3rd round, late 3rd round, because a lot of people, they're not taking him until the 4th round anyways. According to 4for4's fantasy football ADP tool that we are basing these on as well. Not a promotion, not a sponsor of this episode or anything, but if you go to 4for4.com/ADP, you'll be able to find the exact tool that we are using for this video. Let's move on to round 4 here, fellas. 3 rounds down, 7 to go. Cameron, who's your favorite pick in round 4?
It's DJ Moore, and I took him. I'm kind of realizing like every other pick here is almost what I took in our mock draft we did, but that's all right. It's DJ Moore here, and the reason being is I think what we saw last year from DJ Moore is something that he can replicate again this season. Right? He had awful QB play. I mean, there you can't try and say, oh, it was Tyler Bagent and it was Justin Fields and it was bad, and the dude still had 1,300 yards and 8 touchdowns. Right? That can easily happen again with Caleb Williams, especially if you saw some of the throws Caleb Williams was making their last preseason game. The dude's legit, right? You can say all you want, oh, he doesn't stay in the pot. Well, he's going to make throws. He's going to make better throws than what he saw last season. I know he has increased competition for targets with Keenan Allen and Rome Odunze, but I think at this point in their careers, DJ Moore is head and shoulders, like he is the clear wide receiver 1 in this offense. And I think this team's going to throw the ball more than they did last season as well. So there's just going to be more targets to go along with the increased target competition. I love taking DJ Moore in the 4th round.
He's going to be the constant too under Shane Waldron, right? He's going to mix in 11 personnel. They've been running a ton of 2 tight end sets in the preseason. We don't know if it's going to be a rotating Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze for the second wide receiver spot, but what we do know is that it's going to be DJ Moore in that wide receiver 1 spot. So if you're going to go out and get a dude in that Bears offense, you may as well make it DJ Moore because he does have, I think, more upside than we may actually be giving him credit for if Caleb Williams does pan out to be, a future superstar. Tyler, you're also drafting a wide receiver in the 4th round as your favorite pick. Not DJ Moore, though. Another dude who has only 2 letters in his first name, though. Actually, that's technically not true, but we can get into his government name later.
Yeah, that's for later on in the episode. I'm just glad that my guy doesn't have to deal with Shane Waldron anymore. It's DK Metcalf. We have talked plenty about this Seattle offense, and I think I want to approach this with acknowledging the potential risk of DK Metcalf. Is that the problem with Seattle last year was the offensive line. The problem last year was that Geno Smith just could not stay in the pocket for more than like 2.5 seconds without feeling some kind of pressure. The reason why I'm really why DK is a favorite pick of mine in the 4th round and why he's also a value pick to you guys as well is because with Ryan Grubb coming in this just schematic change in this offense, we believe that there is going to be a lot more good that comes out of this passing attack in Seattle that's going to be led by DK Metcalf. And I think a lot of people will also point out Jackson Smith to Jigba going into year 2, right, in this pass happy offense, like why can't he take a step forward? True. DK and JSN are not the same player. Like they are not going to like take away from each other. They're really going to like work together really well in this offense. So I'm not scared away by JSN. I hear the concerns about the offensive line and stuff. Seattle did kind of go out and try to build it out a little bit this offseason too. Mm-hmm. So it's not like they just completely ignored it either. So when it comes to the 4th round and I'm looking at these wide receivers, I like DJ Moore, but man, I like DK Metcalf just a little bit more.
Y'all want to take cracks at their government names? Both DJ Moore and DK Metcalf?
Do they
both start with DJ Moore?
What do you?
They both start with a D.
Okay.
You each get one guess.
There's some.
This is the entertaining part of the episode here.
Daniel Jones Moore.
Oh God, that's disrespectful. Oh, I hope DJ Moore isn't listening. That's disrespectful.
Dude,
Tyler,
the dude just got out of the
better
bag.
Be more respectful than that.
DeQuervius Hamas.
Deniston.
Oh, I knew that.
Moore. Okay, DK Metcalf's a super.
Where does the J come from?
Just shortened for Deniston, I'm sure. DJ is just easier than Denny. Just go
Alright.
DJ. Sounds cooler anyways. I'm with DJ Moore on that. Heck yeah.
All right.
Why am I Googling DJ Moore middle name now all of a sudden?
He said it was Oliver.
So it's Oliver. Deniston Oliver.
It's gonna be on like the dark web or something, because I just Googled DJ Moore. It's like he's a former American football cornerback. No, not that DJ.
No,
Moore.
wrong one.
Google, come on.
Wrong
I don't
one.
even have a
DK.
guess for DK. I don't even know where the Dante Knight with a K.
Dante Knight. I like that though. How about the Jaylen Zacharias Metcalf? There you go.
Would not have got that one in a million years.
DEKAYLIN. The Jaylen Zacharias Metcalf. So there you go.
Would not-
Two government names
would not
for
have
the
picked that
guys who only have 2 letters in their first names on your fantasy football sites. Okay, that was an unnecessary tangent. My favorite player in the 4th round. Again, I'm going with another flag plant. It's Trey McBride. I cannot stand leaving any of my fantasy football drafts this year without an elite tight end. And for me, that ends, like, I'll throw Dalton Kincaid in there, but really for me, it kind of ends after Mark Andrews. And I prefer Trey McBride to Mark Andrews. I have Trey McBride up at my tight end 2 this year. I know he only drew a 17% target share last year, but I think that only goes up with Marvin Harrison Jr. in town now, because these two are going to be the focal points of the passing attack. And now that Trey McBride has fully emerged, now that he isn't dealing with, Zach Ertz for part of the season, right? Like, Trey McBride can fully be unleashed in this Arizona Cardinals offense. That's the best it's been since they traded away DeAndre Hopkins, basically. So I absolutely love Trey McBride in the 4th round. More times than not, I can get him in the mid 4th round is typically where I've been drafting him. And I just love my teams when I can go wide receiver, running back, wide receiver, elite tight end, because I'm getting an advantage over my league mates while still having a solid wide receiver room to start my draft and at least one running back to anchor down my team. So really, this is more of a game theory draft strategy thing than it like flat out is. Like, I think Trey McBride could be the best player in this round, even though I think he could be the best player in this round if he turns out to be the tight end 1 overall this year. Where do you two typically land on tight ends in this round? Because it's Mark Andrews and Trey McBride that go in this range. Sometimes you see a Dalton Kincaid slide up in there if people get a little bit desperate for tight ends, but where do you lean on taking tight end here? Do you like taking elite tight end, or do you prefer to wait? Because I prefer to just take my elite one this year and lock it down and forget about it.
I'm all in on the elite tight end, and I gotta be honest, my tight end, like, on my exposure on Underdog is like 30% McBride, 30% Mark Andrews, 30% Kyle Pitts. Like, it's ridiculous. Like, I don't leave a draft without a top 6 one, and those are the 3 that I take. And it's just like every single draft I'm taking one of those 3. And I'm pretty 50-50 in this round between him and Mark Andrews, because I see the upside with both of them. So yeah, I don't disagree at all with Trey McBride here.
I think I kind of approach it with how the first 3 rounds go. If I have guys that are going to be pretty consistent for me, I will probably punt on tight end and try to find, a wide receiver or running back that has some higher upside than, a Mark Andrews or Trey McBride. That being said, though, I do also just find myself taking a Mark Andrews and Trey McBride in this range, just because their upside to be, the top tight end in fantasy football, you're getting them 2 rounds later than where the other guys are going. So, like, it's hard to ignore. But I think it ultimately depends on just how the draft starts for you.
Yeah, I'm not saying you should absolutely force elite tight end, but if the draft falls favorably to you, where you can say, yeah, I'm going to take an elite tight end here because I feel really good about both my wide receivers and running backs right now, potentially plural there on running backs, then go ahead and do it. But don't force an elite tight end if your build isn't panning out the way you want it to. I personally like to build my teams to make sure I have a shot at getting an elite tight end. If I don't, I can still pivot, but getting a Trey McBride in this range is absolutely wonderful to me. So that's why he is my favorite pick in the 4th round. Let's move on to the 5th round, fellas. Keep this thing moving. Cameron, who's your favorite pick in the 5th round?
It's one of my flag plants. It's Kyle Pitts. Speaking of elite tight ends, I hey,
He's
do
really
not
good.
laugh. Do not
No,
laugh.
hey, he is a very, very good talent, but he has yet to prove he's an elite tight end in fantasy football.
Well, I mean, I think Trey McBride's yet to okay. I think okay. Whatever.
Oh,
Hey, if
Wow.
you're gonna call McBride elite, then you got to call Njoku elite because Njoku outscored him during Trey McBride's best stretch last year. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. If we're not gonna call Kyle Pitts elite,
He said
That's all-
thing. He said
that's all. That's all I'm gonna say.
go ahead and talk about Kyle Pitts. I don't want to have this argument right now.
Second most receiving yards by a rookie tight end. I think that means something. Over 1,000 yards. Getting Kirk Cousins cannot be understated. I don't want to just repeat myself from yesterday because I had my little rant, had all my fun, but I think, and I'm going to say it again, I think he has the highest upside of any tight end in the NFL. I'm not saying he's going to hit it. I'm not saying that I'm saying he's a tight end one, but I think he has to have the most upside because of how good athletically he is. And yeah, I just think that this season he's going to be set up for success, and I want as much Kyle Pitts as I can get.
I don't think you're crazy to say he potentially has the highest upside of any tight end in the NFL. Like from a receiving standpoint, like clearly, I don't think that's crazy to say. The worry I always have with Kyle Pitts is, can he stay on the field and keep the blocking snaps? Because that's not his forte. But again, when you're not on the field for blocking snaps, you're on the field to receive, right? Like blocking snaps don't get you fantasy points, right? That's a common thing too, but also just something to consider when it comes to snap counts and how often Kyle Pitts is on the field when they take him off, etc. But I do think based on his receiving talent, he has an immense amount of upside. Tyler, we both share our favorite pick in the 5th round, and it is indeed one of your flag plants from yesterday's episode. I share in your love here. Your favorite pick in the 5th round is who?
It's Anthony Richardson. I mean, I had to talk about one of my flag plants at some point. Seriously though, like Anthony Richardson, one of 5 quarterbacks, to be completely honest, that has overall QB1 upside. And I would say that he's got a better chance of doing that than some of the guys that go ahead of him in drafts. Even like, I think he has a better shot of finishing as the QB1 than Patrick Mahomes, than Lamar Jackson. I really don't understand what the concern is for Anthony Richardson. If you don't believe in Anthony Richardson, it's because you don't think that he can be a good quarterback. That's the only explanation that I can give for not being in on Anthony Richardson. Cam, you shared a tweet with us earlier today about the joint practices between Cincinnati and Indy. I was searching all day to like make sure that it wasn't like fake news or that it was like anything that was kind of blown out of proportion.
You
and
got
stuff,
aggregated or anything?
Right. Yeah, exactly. When you've got opposing defensive players saying like, is that all he does is run? He's just throwing to spots. He doesn't see his receivers, and they're saying throw the ball. I don't care. Like, that means that he's running, and that's exactly what you want him to do as a mobile quarterback and stuff. And I think too, like, I think there is some developing to be had this year in terms of experience and game time and stuff like that in this Shane Steichen offense. But he's got the supporting cast to do all of that, as well as the coaching. So I really don't understand why people would be out on Anthony Richardson, why they would actually spend early 3rd, late 4th, even early 3rd for some quarterbacks, when they can get similar upside in a guy like Anthony Richardson going 2 rounds later.
Again, we mentioned this on the Flag Plants episode yesterday. It's Jalen Hurts again, right? We all had questions around how good of a passer he could be. Is he just going to get it done with his legs? Now we're talking about him as, a top 2 quarterback in fantasy football every single year. So the question you have around Anthony Richardson, I'm not going to say they're invalid, but when it comes to his fantasy value and how good he could potentially be, they're marginalized severely because of how good he is on the ground. Let's take a quick break, fellas. We'll be back with 5 more rounds after the break. Today's podcast episode is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy, where it is best ball summer. There are 5 core best ball tournaments to play in with over $20 million up for grabs this summer. You can even take a crack at winning the top prize of $1.5 million in their infamous Best Ball Mania 5 contest. To enter, head to UnderdogFantasy.com or download the app and use the code FELLAS to get a first deposit bonus up to $250 and our 2024 draft guide for free. Again, head to UnderdogFantasy.com or download the app and use code FELLAS to sign up. Must be 18 plus and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-522-4700 or visit npcgambling.org. Alrighty, we are back and we have discussed rounds 1 through 5. We are around to round 6, fellas. And yeah, there's still some fun names to talk about in here. I think we could talk a while, but again, the point of this episode is we're trying to give people options. And I think we're really going to get into that here in the latter rounds. So let's fly through here. Cameron, who is your favorite pick in round 6?
Surprise! It's Kyler Murray. And Ty said there's 5 quarterbacks with top 1 upside. Kyler Murray is one of them. And if we're gonna say Anthony Richardson is, I think we gotta say Kyler is.
I'm with Cameron on this one.
I just never heard anyone include Kyler Murray. It seems like there's like the big 5 and they stops there. But
did you not watch my TikTok where I said fired?
I'm kidding. 2-minute minor. Mute him.
You're fired. Go ahead.
What
Cameron.
a wild sentence that doesn't make sense before the 2020s. Didn't you see my TikTok? Anyways. Kyler got the same type of running upside I think Anthony Richardson does. He's had 11 rushing touchdowns in a season. So it's not like we can say, oh no, he doesn't have any upside. He sure does. But man, I don't know. I just completely lost my train of thought as I watched Ty type something in our doc, and that is completely on me. But I think Kyler, like I said, he has top 1 upside. You should draft him. And if you want to see full arguments, watch like 7 of our other episodes from this summer because I'm talking about him in those. So take Kyler.
Well, you could visit our shorts page as well, youtube.com/fantasyfootballfellas shorts. You can visit that page. We post a crap ton about Kyler Murray over there. Almost every single one of our mock drafts, one of us takes Kyler Murray as well. So yeah, we are all in on Kyler Murray this year. Tyler, again, you and I are on the same wavelength here. We share the same favorite pick in the 6th round. So I'll take this one because you've taken the last few. Our favorite pick is Rashee Rice. And this is simply one of the latest spots ever that you're able to draft Patrick Mahomes as wide receiver 1. Now, I understand Travis Kelce is probably going to be the lead target getter out of all these wide receivers, but getting Rashee Rice in the late 6th round at this point is just a bargain, considering Hollywood Brown is still dealing with a shoulder injury that's going to keep him out pretty much right up to week 1, if not through week 1. And even when he comes back, he's not going to be 100%. He's missing valuable time to build that rapport with Patrick Mahomes here. And Rashee Rice probably just isn't going to get suspended at this point. I mean, unless there's an update in the next week and a half, we're looking at Rashee Rice playing right away on Thursday Night Football against the Baltimore Ravens. And Rashee Rice last year, very clearly, lead target getter, or not lead target getter. Patrick Mahomes is number 1 wide receiver at the end of the season from week 12 on. Talk about the guy's a top 10 fantasy wide receiver. He was top 12 in yards per route run last year at the wide receiver position, yards after the catch. Correct me if I'm wrong, targets per route run as well. This is a guy who, Xavier Worthy is a nice pick as well, but Rashee Rice has already got the rapport. He's a safety blanket along with Travis Kelce underneath for Patrick Mahomes. I just think Rashee Rice is the most likely to be the number 1 for Patrick Mahomes this year. And this is the latest you'll ever be able to get the wide receiver 1 for Patrick Mahomes-led offense that is going to have a bounce back season. Cameron, what was the stat you gave out on their total touchdowns as a team yesterday?
They had 39 last year, and in the 3 prior seasons, they had not had lower than 55 in a season. So I think they're in for some positive regression.
And Rashee Rice was used frequently around the red zone as well. Was a favorite of Patrick Mahomes once they got near the goal line. Let's move on to the 7th round, fellas. Cameron, you and I share the same pick here. You must have made that change during the episode. I'm actually going to have Ty start us off here then. Ty, who's your favorite pick in the 7th round?
I honestly am kind of scrambling here because somebody changed my answer for me. So now I'm like going back through. I'm like, wait, who was it? I'm pretty
you had
sure.
Rashee Rice listed in the 7th.
Yeah,
You were
that's
off
true.
on your rounds, and that's why
I
I
was
gave
off.
you. I gave you a guy you mentioned as almost a my guy yesterday, or a flag panic, yesterday. So I figured that's who you wanted right there, Ty.
No,
Well, go ahead.
I'll
You
take
make
the actual.
You make your pick. You make your pick, and Cameron and I will talk about our favorite player first. So go ahead, Cameron. You can share my love for your favorite pick in this round.
It's Raheem Mostert, who surprise Lucas actually said was almost one of his flag
true,
plans
on the
yesterday
audio
as
feed.
well. So, oh yeah, it was only on the audio. So you YouTube
Only
guys
on the audio
don't
feed. Yeah.
YouTube guys are missing it. But yeah, he's on a team that he just scored 18 touchdowns on last season. He's still supposed to be the lead guy in the backfield. I understand he's got the age thing. We were taking him in the 7th round. How often are you taking the running back 2 overall in the 7th round, the next year after nothing changed, in his situation? So yeah, I understand like Raheem Mostert shouldn't be taken as a 2nd round pick, but the 7th round is just too much of an overcorrection on him.
Yeah, basically people have said I don't think he can score 18 touchdowns again this year, therefore I don't want him. Which is just stupid. Because nobody it's no guarantee Devon Achane splits goal line work with Raheem Mostert. I still think Devon Achane is the guy between the 20s. He'll get mixed in inside of the 20 as well, but honestly, it's going to be Raheem Mostert still when they're inside of the 10-yard line. Like, there's a world where Raheem Mostert still scores 10, 12 touchdowns this year. And sure, he's not going to be the running back 2, but could he be the running back 15 this year that you're drafting in the 7th round that you can pair with an anchor running back like a Christian McCaffrey, like a Travis Etienne, like a Breece Hall? Absolutely. So yeah, I am taking that shot all day in the 7th round. Tyler, that should have been enough time for you to make a decision. There's only 12 guys that can go in the 7th round. Who's your pick for the 7th round?
It's my other flag plant, Jake Ferguson. I mean,
yeah.
I thought about Chris Godwin. The reason why I go Ferguson here over Godwin is just because you need Liam Cohen of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to like listen to this episode and be like, hey, if you're gonna put Chris Godwin in the slot more this year, like help a brother out. Versus Jake Ferguson, I know that he's the tight end 1 and has the opportunity to be the number 2 option in this Dallas offense. Like, Chris Godwin is the number 2 technically in that Tampa offense already, but like, if he's still on the outside more than he is in the slot, we are going to see another season like we saw last year from Chris Godwin. Versus Jake Ferguson, again, had over 100 targets last year, was first in red zone targets. Like, Jake Ferguson is, I want to say, is primed to take that next step and kind of put himself into the upper tiers of the tight ends. Yeah, like, we have a lot of good tight ends this year. We talked about McBride. We talked about Andrews. Like, you still have Kelsey's and the Laportas. Ferguson, along with Pitts, I think Cam would say that too. They can definitely enter that conversation by next season. And I just think if you believe in this Dallas Cowboys offense that they will still put up yards and points, you should be in on Jake Ferguson as well.
Let's move on to the 8th round with that, fellas. Cameron, once again, Tyler and I are just on the same wavelength today. We are sharing a lot of the same favorite picks in each of the rounds. So, Cameron, you and I don't share the same favorite pick anymore. So I'll let you start us off here. And I'll spoil it for you. Surprise! It's a flag plant.
Surprise! Oh yeah, it's Deontay Johnson. He is a guy like we talk about drafting. I take him so much, it's ridiculous. He's another one that, like, in our mock drafts, he's always there on sleeper, and I'm like, man, I just don't know if I can take him for the 9th draft in a row. I maybe need to change it up a little bit here, and it just has to do with the amount of volume that he's going to see And the fact that he has shown that he can handle that kind of volume, at the wide receiver position, 147, 161, and 144 targets in the 3 seasons prior to last year. If he sees that kind of volume, he is going to easily outperform his wide receiver 42 price tag, because he's a guy too. I know he's had 0 touchdowns in a season when he had 142 targets. His season average, other than that, is 7 touchdowns in a year. If he has 150 targets with 7 touchdowns, he's a top 25 wide receiver, and he's easily, outperforming his round 8 ADP.
Yeah, he could, again, for like the 5th episode, I feel like I've said it, he could literally drown in targets in this Carolina Panthers offense under Dave Canales. Ty, I took the last player that we had in common, so I'm going to let you take this one, your favorite player and my favorite player to take in the 8th round.
I'm going to switch it up on you. Sorry here, pal.
Oh my gosh.
I already talked about it.
We were organized, and then we decided to be disorganized.
I know. Tyler's just like shaking it up. Tyler's had all of his notes sitting pretty, and then it's just like, boom, nope, here we go.
My bad, fellas. No, I talked about a Seattle wide receiver already, so I'm going to switch it up a little bit. I'm going to go Rome Odunze here in the 8th round. We talked about with DJ Moore. Hey, isn't that funny? We already talked about DJ Moore. So you know what? Huh? Oh, right. Dennis Oliver. I'll say Rome Odunze here, because I think the payoff, the second half payoff for Rome Odunze is going to be spectacular. Like I have said on record before that, like, I think Jalen Polk can be the second half of the year kind of rookie breakout wide receiver. I would not be surprised if it's Rome Odunze first and then Jalen Polk, just because I believe in the talent so much. I think he's going to get on the field sooner than people anticipate. And the beauty is, with this round 8 capital, you're not taking him at a price that you risk, taking him as a top 3 wide receiver option on your team. You can take him as a 4th or even 5th if you like 0 RB it, or you don't invest in the onesie position right away. So you then benefit from getting better skill position players, and then you can benefit from the second half of the year breakout from Rome Odunze. I just think the situation in Chicago is going to do him wonders. 2 wide receiver sets, I think he's going to get on the field right away. And again, with his talent, skill set, I'm a big fan of that draft position. And I don't want to put the caveat of like only uncertain builds will I like that pick. But at the same time, like, I just like the player so much that when I see that name pop up in the 8th round, I'm like, shoot, dang it. Like I get really, really tempted to take him there.
Yeah, Rome Odunze and Keenan Allen are on 2 totally different career arcs, right? Like Keenan Allen is trending towards fading out of the league at this point, despite a monstrous season volume-wise last year. He's not Chicago, though, right? Where he's got Rome Odunze's competition, DJ Moore, Shane Waldron coming in as his offensive coordinator, running a crap ton of 11 personnel, where it probably will be Rome Odunze in those sets by the end of the season. So, yeah, I agree. I love DJ Moore in the 8th round. I do prefer Jackson Smith and Jigba more, though. Again, for a lot of the same reasons I like DK Metcalf. The reason why DK Metcalf is a flag plant for me, I actually still like Jackson Smith and Jigba in this range too, because we all know the talent of JSN. Like, first round wide receiver, extremely highly touted prospect coming out of college, out of Ohio State. He gets, I don't want to say a guaranteed upgraded offensive coordinator, but the offensive structure favors more of what JSN can offer to the Seattle Seahawks with Ryan Grubb, with how pass happy his offense is going to be. So taking JSN here, as your wide receiver 4 just feels like a free value that we're going to look at the end of the season. It's like, yeah, remember when we all loved this guy in his rookie season, and then Shane Waldron made us not like him so much, and he actually is who we thought he was. That's just what it feels like JSN is going to be this year. It's like he is exactly who we thought he was when he was coming out of college, which was a phenomenal NFL wide receiver who could thrive in the Seattle Seahawks offense. That's why I love Jackson Smith and Jigba in the 8th round. We have 2 more rounds to cover here, fellas. So Cameron, kick us off in the 9th round. Who's your favorite pick here?
Before I go, I just saw who Ties is in the 9th, and I am absolutely
I'm a little shocked by this.
Yeah, but I'll go with mine first. It's Jordan Addison,
teaser.
and Yeah, I know. He's just messing with us now. It's Jordan Addison. And similar to Rashee Rice, right? It doesn't sound like he's going to get a suspension this season. If Jordan Addison plays, um, all 17 games, he's going to be good for fantasy football. He was great last season, even when Jefferson came back, even with, those bad, quarterbacks that they had. We saw him put up double-digit touchdowns. KOC knows how to run this offense. I think that I just think that going in round 9 as late as he's going, we're baking in the fact that he's going to be suspended when it really sounds like he's not. So you're just getting that kind of value where people are like, oh, he's going to miss 4 games. Well, he's probably not going to miss 4 games.
Well, and then you get with Nick Mullins, or not with Nick Mullins. Oh, JJ McCarthy is out. I think we're boiling down to when it's like, I think Sam Darnold was going to be the starter for the majority of the season anyways. I've always believed that. Again, my concern with Addison, I talked about this with Jefferson, is that Addison only scored 1 touchdown without Kirk Cousins last year. That's where my concern comes into play. But again, when you then miss TJ Hawkinson for 4, 5, 6 games, my guess is that he probably doesn't come back till after the bye. You're looking at Jordan Addison, who could get plenty more volume, and some of the touchdowns that would fall to TJ Hawkinson could actually just fall right back to Jordan Addison. So, Ty, who have you landed on as your favorite pick in the 9th round?
It's Ladd McConkey. It doesn't feel like a super sexy pick just because I don't think a lot of people have high expectations for this Chargers team. But I've had to remind myself that yes, while Jim Harbaugh is the head coach and Greg Roman is the offensive coordinator, we are not going to see the Baltimore Ravens Greg Roman offense in LA. Yeah, they will still want to run the ball because that is Jim Harbaugh's MO. Like, completely understood. But this is not going to be a team where they're going to rush more than they are going to pass, because that's a complete waste of Justin Herbert's talent, right? And we also like Ladd's teammate Josh Palmer for where he goes in drafts, just because we expect him to be on the field the most out of these 3 wide receivers, right? With his rapport with Herbert. I just like the talent that is Ladd McConkey, for the fact that he can get open and he can separate. He was one of the best to do that in this draft class. And you pair that up with Justin Herbert on a team that will likely be throwing the ball quite a bit this year, just because I don't think they're going to be winning many of their games. So they're going to be playing from behind. So in that kind of sense, like, we are kind of having to like hit a lot of check marks in order for Ladd McConkey to hit. But the thing is, like, again, I don't think it's necessarily we need to hit all these check boxes for McConkey to hit. I just think Ladd will eventually kind of separate himself at some point this season as the best wide receiver on the team and Justin Herbert's favorite target.
My favorite pick in the 9th round, admittedly, when I first looked at this list, my thought was, I hate everybody in this round, but if someone were to put a gun to my head, I would have picked Ladd McConkey. But then I saw who goes at the 901, and I said, I'm going to get away with this. Just like Cam can get away with Devon Achane in round 3. I'm going to get away with Tyjae Spears here. Now, I think Tyjae Spears is probably more prone to slide in round 9 than Devon Achane is in round 3. But I'm going to choose to attack ambiguity in this point of the draft. Christian Watson goes in this range as well. He was in consideration for me. I really like his upside, but I think as the season goes on, I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see more Dontavian Wicks, and I don't know who that's going to come at the expense of. And what if Christian Watson hasn't actually figured out the whole hamstring thing? So I'm still in on Christian Watson. I still love him as a value in the 9th round, but I'm going to give the edge to Tyjae Spears just because, at the end of the season, we could be looking at it and saying, what if Tony Pollard, it actually wasn't the injury last year? What if Tyjae Spears is just more flashy, is more slippery than Tony Pollard, and we just see him get more production and he turns into the 1A over Tony Pollard in this offense? So I'm going to choose to attack ambiguity in a player that I personally believe in the 9th round and make him my favorite pick here. I like Tyjae Spears at this point. You can make him your running back 4 on any of your teams, and I really do enjoy that pick. All right, fellas, let's close it out here. Round 10, final pick. We all got the exact same player, so we're going to make this short and simple. We all love Brian Thomas Jr. in the 10th round. The people have not corrected to the mean yet, to what we've been seeing in preseason. Cameron, I'll let you write your love letter to Brian Thomas Jr. first, because he's been your guy in the pre-draft process. We all liked him in the pre-draft process, but you specifically, after the NFL draft was over, in your rookie drafts, have gone out and staked your claim of like, no, I'm going to make sure I have plenty shares of Brian Thomas Jr. this year.
Yeah, it's just I love the talent that is Brian Thomas, right? He was one of the most raw wide receivers coming out that was taken in the first round, and the dude is just explosive as all get out, right? He's going to run past everybody. He's going to jump over everybody. He's one of those guys like you hear me talk about like DK Metcalf, AJ Brown. Like, why do I like them? Because they're bigger, faster, stronger than everyone else. That's Brian Thomas right now, you know, and he's just an athlete. And the reports out of camp have been good enough now that I'm starting to get excited, right? It's talking, okay, he's actually coming along. And if I'm not expecting Brian Thomas to be wide receiver 1 in Jacksonville day 1, but we talk about, you know, rookies take, you know, a couple weeks. If by week 8, he's, you know, starting to look like the wide receiver 1 in Jacksonville, you really do have a league winner on your hand. And taking him in the 10th round, you can afford to wait those weeks, right? We talk about like Malik Neighbors up in the 3rd, 4th round. If he takes 6 or 7 weeks to get going, you can't really afford that with your, you know, with your 4th round pick, whereas your 10th round pick, you definitely can. So that is why I love Brian Thomas at this value.
Tyler, add in your thoughts on why you like Brian Thomas in the 10th.
Maybe a bit of a similar argument that we used or that we would go to bat for with for Anthony Richardson. But what if Brian Thomas is more just inexperienced than raw? And you kind of said it in a different way too. What if he's the best wide receiver on the Jaguars from day 1? That is a possibility within his range of outcomes. At some point this season, I think we all expect him to become the best in the number 1 wide receiver in this offense. So it's really, you know, not to say that like it's only a what if, but the thing is for the price that you got to pay for the guy, like the payoff can be absolutely massive.
Absolutely massive is 100% right. And we're not just making these claims of like, what if Brian Thomas Jr. could be the best way? The reason why we're making that claim is because he's actually come out and shown us that in preseason. He's come out and made some big plays. He's come out and shown that, that big play ability that we saw where he could go deep and go get one for you, you know, a nation leading 17 touchdowns at LSU last year. He's lived up to that hype. He's made it look easy on the next level so far in preseason. So we'll see how it translates into the regular season. Again, we're anticipating rookies, wide receivers always have a slower start to the season. But Brian Thomas Jr. is one of those guys where, again, Cameron, you're talking by week 7, by week 8, nobody's going to be surprised if he's like actually dominating the wide receiver snaps for the Jaguars. And I think that's the other thing we didn't bring up either. Like this guy has been out on the field in 2 wide receiver sets for the Jaguars this season. He hasn't been coming off the field. It's been him and Gabe Davis. So granted, Christian Kirk dealing with a calf injury. I think that might boil into it. But you know, looking at him compared to Gabe Davis, it's pretty clearly Brian Thomas Jr. is going to be out there over Gabe Davis if Christian Kirk decides to, you know, or if the coaches decide to keep Christian Kirk in on 2 wide receiver sets as well. So there you have it. Our favorite picks in the first 10 rounds of your fantasy football drafts. Nearly 30 different players. Not quite 30 because we had some overlap, but we talked through a ton of different guys in this episode. We have given you a ton of different options in every round of your drafts, except for the 10th round, because we all love Brian Thomas Jr. So just take Brian Thomas Jr. in the 10th round. That's your main takeaway from this episode.
Yes.
But we're going to be back next week. We're going to talk about some league winners, some guys with league losing downside as well. So again, if you're not subscribed already, make sure you do that. Turn on those notifications as well. Over on YouTube, I see you over there. You've watched this episode, and now all you got to do is hit subscribe and turn on those notifications. Same for the podcast feed as well. Make sure you subscribe, turn on notifications over there, and leave us a nice little review. Helps keep the podcast pumping along. We appreciate you all who listen over on the audio feed as well. You can follow us on Twitter at FFFellas, the FFFellas on Instagram, Fantasy Football Fellas on Facebook and TikTok. I am at Lucas Wenzel on Twitter, CamLaw, FFF Cameron, Tyler_Black. We will see you all next week. Until next time, though, stay safe, stay healthy. Deuces.
Deuces.